we go. Podcast.
Okay, testing. Spider-Man. Does whatever a spider can.
I want to go home.
Where do you record?
My home.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Waffle Press Retrospective. We're here talking about Spider-Man, and today we're talking about the most controversial entry in the series to date, somehow. Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 3, technically. I say technically because it is well known in the history of the world and politics that Sam Raimi was not in love with the script for this film. He was not in love with the character of Venom. And when you're making a film, as Sam Raimi will attest to, you should probably love everything about the story you're making. It just kind of helps things, if we're being honest. This is a divisive film. Its history is well documented on the internet. It made Empire's top 50 worst movies ever made list, which is ridiculous. If you've seen like 5 movies, I could see why you would think that. I actually really like Spider-Man 3.
Good for you.
How are you, Matt?
I'm not great.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry to hear that.
I'm in a mood.
Mm.
I don't know what it is, but it feels like before we started recording this episode, I had this other voice just chipping away in my head, just babbling incoherently, making idiotic points that just didn't make any sense for almost 2 hours. And now I got to do a podcast with you.
It has nothing to do with the fact that we recorded Spider-Man 2 and 3 back-to-back?
No, I'm talking about something unrelated. This happens to cover the exact same amount of time.
Oh, okay, good. You had me concerned there for a second.
You should be.
What are your thoughts about Spider-Man 3? When you first saw it, do you remember your time and place, what you reacted to?
You know what's crazy? I realized something sitting down to watch Spider-Man 3. Not only did I not own Spider-Man 3, I don't think I've seen Spider-Man 3 since its 2007 release.
And
I don't know how that happened. And it was shocked because I remembered so much of this movie. Watching it, I knew basically the whole movie. But I think I only watched it that one time in 2007. And I wasn't in love with it then. And I'm not in love with it now, but I don't hate it. It's fine. But I think what makes me go like, I don't want to give it a pass in any way, because there's a lot of good ideas in it. There's a lot of interesting stuff, but it's really a mess, honestly. And what makes me not want to give it a pass, I'm not putting blame on it, because everyone wants a hero and a villain, although we do have a good villain in this story.
Oh, yeah.
But to me, it's just, I know all the people behind this could have done a better movie than they made. That's all it really comes down to.
As someone who is a fan of this movie, I would also agree.
That makes it worse, in my opinion.
It does hurt it, for sure.
Because it's not, this movie isn't even full of, like, bad stuff. It's just not, it just doesn't do enough with its good stuff.
I mean, it's a frustrating movie. I revisited it for the first time a couple of years ago for like the 10th anniversary, and since then I've revisited it a couple more times. But really, the big takeaway was that it's more frustrating than genuinely bad. There's bad stuff.
Yeah. Well, all the stuff
that
you normally hear about this movie are all, for the most part, those complaints I find very tiresome. But the stuff you're less about is just, again, this movie's mostly a mess with stories that are constantly stopping and starting, that don't flow into each other very well.
It's kind of what happened with Spider-Man 1, with Spider-Man and the Green Goblin's origins being a separate thing and then colliding eventually.
Except that happens like 6 times.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say 5, but yeah. It happens a lot.
To me, honestly, what's weird is that I'm willing to bet everyone was probably taken off guard by how either poorly it fit together or how poorly it was received. Because it honestly sounds like they had a very similar production to this that they had on two. Because two kind of sounded like a bit of a mess that they like pulled out in the end, and they made what Roger Ebert called the best superhero film ever made. And here it sounds like they kind of followed a very similar process, and then it just didn't work this time. Like the stars just didn't align at the last minute like they normally did. Again, there's a lot of interesting ideas. Honestly, this movie, it's a lot. There's a lot of big ideas in this about like moral relativism and predeterminism and just like the idea of the self. But it's none of it is interesting enough to carry the whole movie, which is shocking because those sound like pretty big ideas to deal with. But we constantly have to like forget about one story to complete another,
Yeah.
And that becomes very tiresome as the movie goes on.
And you know what? I'm even willing to contend that it's not that there are too many characters, it's that they're too separate for too long of the film. I think there's a way to even tie all of these stories together.
Yeah.
So I don't really buy into that whole too many villains complaint anymore, even. It's just, it is very messy.
One thing I will say about this movie is that, for one, it's shocking where the story is at an hour into the film.
You mean not very far?
Well, yeah, but like almost a completely new story starts exactly 1 hour into the movie. And there's almost 90 minutes left, so it's enough time to just do a whole new movie. And then this movie starts what will become a tradition for later superhero films that I think sink many of them, which is the 30-minute long final fight, which is very not good in this.
It's not emotionally interesting anymore.
There's no emotional climax of this movie. There's an emotional conclusion, but I wouldn't say an emotional climax.
Well, I'll even say that it kind of works for me just because this is me kind of softballing the movie, I'll admit. But because of where these characters wind up in their lives with each other or like apart, that everyone's just like emotionally devastated. No one knows what to do about anything anymore. It kind of elevates the movie in an accidental way for me because all they can do by the end of it is just kind of like, well, let's see if we can try to set things right for once. And that is not what the movie needed to end on, I don't think.
Without giving it away, I do like that the movie kind of lingers for a little bit at the end, and doesn't give like a neat conclusion to things. But it's just I don't know, it's too much. It really is. This movie, there's just way too much going on in it. I'm not sure if it's too many characters. It's just too many storylines that never meet up.
Mm-hmm.
It's.
Could I read you a quote from Sam Raimi when he was developing the character of Peter Parker for this film? The most important thing Peter Parker right now has to learn is that this whole concept of him as the Avenger or him as the hero, he wears this red and blue outfit. With each criminal he brings to justice, he's trying to pay down this debt of guilt he feels about the death of Uncle Ben. He considers himself a hero and a sinless person versus these villains that he nabs. We felt it would be a great thing for him to learn a little less black and white view of life and that he's not above these people.
That's a great thing to just drop into the movie an hour in and then only explore for about 10 minutes.
In a nutshell, that's a great idea for the film.
Yes, no, honestly, the movie works for a couple minutes.
It works in fits and starts, and the overall movie does work for me.
I'll be honest, you know what movie this reminded me of?
Dark Knight Rises?
BVS.
Oh.
Yeah.
Ooh, we're going places now.
Yeah, it very much reminded me of BVS. That movie didn't work for me because I felt it was a mess. And this movie doesn't work for me because I felt it was a mess. And maybe, that's entirely, it just doesn't have what I watch movies for.
Mm-hmm.
And, other people can get around that, apparently. Because everyone tells me that BVS is a secret masterpiece. So, I don't know. I was very disappointed because they were all like every now and then there'd be like a moment where I was like, all right, now we're getting somewhere. And it would get really interesting for like 5 minutes, and then it would just stop. And it just kept happening, and it just lost me after a while.
Over the course of the release of Spider-Man 2, Ivan Raimi wrote the first treatments over a span of 2 months,
Yeah,
and
with Sam. Sam like oversaw it.
mm-hmm.
And they wanted to, like you said, you mentioned you had the quote about, kind of they wanted to explore that Peter wasn't just some senseless vigilante,
Yeah,
and that he wasn't also, devoid of sin, um, and that there can be humanity. Because at this point, there had been a lot of black and whiteness in this series, even with very sympathetic villains. They weren't necessarily villains that were doing something for a good reason.
yeah.
But They were also so basically the two plans were to go with that, revisit Uncle Ben's death, and then there were plans to conclude Harry Osborn's story arc, and the villains were going to be Sandman and the Vulture, and they even talked to Ben Kingsley a little bit about playing the Vulture.
Oh, that would have been so good.
But instead, we meet the true villain of Spider-Man, Avi Arad.
Who we just literally talked about in Spider-Man 2 as making a good decision to avoid a not great idea for a young Dr. Octopus.
Not a great idea.
This will be the last time I will speak positively about his work on these films.
And he basically forced Venom into this film, which I know everyone knows about. And it's not even that, like, I don't even think the problem would be taking Venom out. It's just that what they end up... Venom only becomes a thing, like, at the very end. It's so ridiculous. He's like, yes, finally, Spider-Man. And it's like, we haven't met before.
But the symbiote stuff, I actually think, is handled moderately well.
There's some good ideas in it. There's a lot of good ideas in this movie. And they just never come together. That's the thing. I think it's Altman. Maybe it's Robert Altman, I could be saying. But there's a quote from a director where talks about how working on a movie, it's just like, it feels like everything is going wrong, that nothing's working, you can't get any of your ideas. But then when you sit down to make it, the thing just happens. That's the quote. And this is like the opposite of that.
Aww.
Where the thing just doesn't happen. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. And that seems to be true. Like, there's a lot of movies out there where there's a lot of passion and a lot of belief put into it and a lot of people working hard, and it just never comes together. I would honestly say that's BVS's problem. I just watched John Carter for the first time, and that's definitely that movie's problem.
I got a soft spot for that one.
Too. I do too, but it's never, like, it totally makes sense why it flopped. Like, it's a movie literally made for, like, me and 3 other people. And I don't blame other people for not liking it. It's not like one of those ones where it's like, everyone should appreciate Mad Max Fury Road. But, like, not, like, John Carter is, like, a very narrow thing. As I would say, I would even apply that to something that I genuinely like The Dark Knight, where there are certain people that movie is not for, and I can't blame them for not being into it. Another Avi Arad suggestion was to finally bring in Gwen Stacy, but that worked a little better because the script I guess they were working on, Sam Raimi had already been developing a quote unquote other girl that they just kind of fit in the Gwen Stacy character into. And then Alvin Sargent was given all these pieces and being like, you figure it out.
Poor guy.
And he was paid, hey, no, not poor guy, because he was paid 7 figures for this fucking movie.
Never mind.
And he was given an option to write a 4th film. And he was so overwhelmed by the disparate plot elements that he even considered splitting the movie into 2 films. But then he couldn't find an intermediate climax for the story. So he's like, I can't do it. And he didn't find an actual climax either, to be honest.
We'll get there.
It's okay, but that's all this movie is.
There are some of the best action set pieces, like in the first half of this movie, that I've ever seen.
There are some good ones. I don't like the first
round.
I guess because I don't really like the first Green.
The movie kind of hopped around too.
Yeah, I don't really like the first Green Goblin fight.
It's that one's weird for me. It's got spurts and starts too, like the story itself. But some moments are just like so visually like stunning and thrilling. Like you're swooping in and out of these places, and it ends weird. That's the thing. That one ends weird for me. Uh, with the whole amnesia thing.
Yeah, which I have a big problem with that as a plot point, but it does get started something where one of the themes of this movie is like what makes you as a human being. Because we're constantly getting characters who forget who they are in a way. Like Thomas Hayden Church plays the Sandman in this, and I like Thomas Hayden Church, but he kind of feels lost in this movie at times.
I thought
And
he was really good.
there are moments of brilliance, but there's a couple times where it's like, I mean, the movie forgets about him,
Oh
and
yeah.
I get the feeling he was on set sometimes being like, well, what am I doing here? I know he's one of those actors who's like, what's my motivation? So you get the sense that there was some problems like that.
Really quick for more Thomas Hayden Church love, go check out Divorce on HBO. He's very good in
Hey,
that.
sure, I haven't seen it. I do not
Oh,
endorse it.
okay. You would like it.
Maybe. I like Barry. Barry's good. I just finished
Oh,
Barry.
Barry's fucking amazing.
Barry's very good.
Yeah.
Things are good.
Including Spider-Man 3.
Yes.
I'm gonna ask MJ to marry me.
A man has to put his wife before himself. Can you do that, Peter?
Yeah, I think I can.
We have some new information. This is your uncle's actual killer. We lost his trail 2 days ago.
This man killed my uncle, and he's still out there.
Everybody needs help sometimes, Peter. Even Spider-Man.
Spider-Man. Spider-Man. Fuck this movie.
No.
No, don't fuck this movie. It's fine. I don't know. Because again, all right, so we get this character, we get all these characters. Harry gets amnesia very early on, and forgetting, like, his father, forgetting who he is, forgetting that he knows who Spider-Man is, completely changes his personality. And he picks up painting at one point, and he becomes like a fun, nice guy, and you kind of get a picture of like, hey, maybe this is what this guy would have ended up like if he didn't have this like burden of his father hanging over him, like this awful relationship, and it like brings up all these interesting questions about like how much our parents like determine our lives beyond our control. And then you get the Sandman who literally falls apart and has to rebuild himself as a new person. So he's got to rebuild himself. He's also this criminal. He says at one point, he says at the end of the movie, which is a good time to bring this up, that he got into this for good reasons, but he ended up in a place that he didn't mean to. And so he doesn't know who he is anymore. And then we also learn at some point that Uncle Ben wasn't killed by that guy in the first movie. It was actually the Sandman. And that like completely undercuts how Spider-Man has viewed himself for the past couple of years, you know? Like, Peter has an identity crisis. And MJ has one. Everyone's having, like, all these identity crises about who they are. And they can't talk to each other about it. And it's not... Like, that's very interesting, and it just doesn't work. I was so... Like, all right, it's going somewhere, and it never did.
I think the
Like,
opening of the film and the ending of the film are some of the best stuff in the series. And the middle, which is a long middle.
it was working for me until the meteorite with the Venom thing in it landed.
One of the few good YouTubers out there I really like, the Unusual Suspect, I think his name is. He has a great bit on the Raimi trilogies. He's also a big fan of them. And he was like trying to discover why they would just write that in, because these are clearly talented writers, you know? And so the whole thing is like, oh yeah, the symbiote comes down because God. Like, that's basically what it is, like fate or something. I don't know, destiny maybe. We don't really have an answer.
You almost get this idea that it's a fuck you to Avi Arad. Like, we're going to find the laziest way to incorporate this. And that's the other frustrating thing. It doesn't feel like this should be... We have these, like, several independent storylines going on of like Peter wants to marry MJ, Harry is the new Green Goblin, Sandman exists, and a meteorite hits with the symbiote inside. And like those are like there's like 5 different things. And I feel like there's a way they could have tied that together better, you know?
Yeah.
Like, how hard would it have been to be like, like, you know, to tie the Green Goblin storyline into the Sandman storyline a little bit, like just a little bit, just to make it a little smoother as a story. Not that he accidentally falls into this sand machine.
That's a little silly, but you know what? That one I can get on that wavelength for.
I can, but like it loses me after a while because stuff like that just keeps happening. You know, it's like one after the other for like the first 30 minutes of this fucking movie. And again, I didn't really hate it. There's not really enough here to hate. Like, I don't get people who walk away from this being like, this ruins Spider-Man, because it doesn't. It's just, it's watching it and being like, how did the people who made this make Spider-Man 2? That's really all you're asking the whole time. Because that movie is like so, it works so well, and this one just is a lot choppier. And when you have Spider-Man 2 behind you, it's like, I know they can do better. And this is it's bigger than like one step backwards from Spider-Man 2.
It's about a hopscotch.
It's a step back from Spider-Man 1. You know?
Yeah, I mean, it's clearly the weakest of the 3. But a couple things. Can we get into the Sandman thing now?
Yeah, sure.
All right.
Wow, those special effects are real good. All right, we're done.
No, the special effects are very good. But it's one of the most visually, emotionally expressive sequences in this era of VFX heavy films. You know?
No, that's a great moment that no movie today would have. A scene where we just see the Sandman become the Sandman. Because so many movies now like start with our hero and villain already heroes and villains.
And I kind of like being able to jump into stuff like that, but there's real texture to this story, I think, even with all its many, many flaws and disparate plot threads.
Well, it's the theme realized visually because he literally reconstructs himself, and he does it around the necklace of his dying daughter that he's been robbing people to raise money for.
Yeah, that's the whole story right there, and you don't get that.
Everyone's doing that in this movie. Everyone's getting torn down and rebuilding themselves. That's the whole movie. It's right there in one scene, visual. It's really good. It's better than the movie it's in. It's hard to keep playing bad cop, but like I was disappointed.
No, yeah, it is a disappointment. But
because honestly, you know, because the internet condition, like the internet makes everything either like 100% great or like 100% bad. And the frustrating thing with this is that it's so close to being something. And it just never gets there.
I want to talk about another very flawed aspect of the film, and that is Topher Grace as Eddie Brock. I'm going to say that I think he's actually pretty good when he's just Eddie Brock. Once the symbiote comes on, he's out of his depth a little bit, and that's not on him.
It's a mistake there. I don't know why they didn't just stick to the Venom look. Maybe it just didn't look very well. But again, if they didn't, then Peter would be like, "Who are you? Why am I fighting you?" But he still kind of is like that. No, honestly, I really like Topher Grace as like a scumbag in like the first half of this movie. But once he's actually in the Venom suit, it's a letdown. It's like they forced Venom into this movie and then they didn't deliver. So honestly, I almost feel like maybe Sam Raimi was like self-sabotaging.
I'm glad you said that because I've kind of had that theory for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is I'm too big a fan to ever consider the sabotage. I like it too much.
Yeah.
But no, he's very good in the first half of the movie, maybe even a little bit towards the third. Like there's this really awkwardly powerful moment where he goes into the church to pray to God to kill Peter Parker.
That was really funny.
It's like, holy shit, dude, get help.
Well, part of it is that, you know, symbiote Spider-Man made Venom, basically. So
Mm-hmm.
in more ways than one, but whatever.
No.
Jesus
You're
Christ.
onto something. Keep going.
No, it's just it's not that interesting. Honestly, it's just not like I'm working about as hard as this fucking movie worked. And I mean, fuck this movie. Sorry, I'm not. I took so many notes on a movie that went nowhere. It's not fun when that happens. Because like honestly, it's like there's pieces here for a good movie, and it's just not this movie. And that's not a really interesting take because I'm basically just saying like another thing that I really don't like, even though like I would say it makes a little more sense than maybe some people give it credit for. But the engineering of the breakup between MJ and Peter, which I'm just not a fan of as a plot point. I just, it feels like writers, they only understand relationships when they're forming and falling apart.
I'll go even further and say that no, most people do not even understand how to write a relationship falling apart because so much of fictional romance that like details that is just awful a lot of the time.
What almost saves this is that they kind of break up because Peter's going to propose and it doesn't go well. And I'll talk about that scene in more detail maybe later. But we basically get the feeling that they're on a break, but it's not a break up,
Mm-hmm.
And we even are given an indication that, like, she's had her time. She almost starts a thing with Harry, but realizes it's a mistake. And they're going to reach out and maybe finally talk after a while. And we even have a moment where she goes to talk to him, but he's all influenced by the symbiote suit. And, like, now he's the one who's closed off. But then he also realizes the mistake. So there's like one moment where they can finally get together again, but then Harry, as the Green Goblin, comes in and he's like, "No, I'm forcing you to break up with him."
Is it weird that I was actually kind of into that?
It's fine. No, honestly, it kind of works, and then it goes somewhere because then it's like Harry's like, "I'm the other guy," and then Peter throws a pumpkin bomb at him, and that storyline ends for 30 minutes.
The way it plays out after is so weird because it just stops.
It's another moment where I'm like, finally, it's going somewhere. And it's working, and I'm into it, and then it just stops. And I mean, before that, we get like Sandman is introduced. They don't know what to do with Sandman for like a huge chunk of this movie. He doesn't even need to be here. Like you kind of need that moment of Peter realizing that someone else killed Uncle Ben. Like you need that for plot reasons and for the emotional arc. We don't see Sandman planning. Like why is he robbing anything? What's going on? Where is he hiding out? What's his ultimate goal? Like, we get that it's something to do with his daughter, but, like, is she even curable? Like, we never even established that. Yeah.
Like, what she's sick with? Or anything. I'm kind of into the idea that he has nowhere to go, like, punctuated by the end of the film where he just drifts off into sand.
We're also talking about, in the last movie, Dr. Octopus robbing banks and being able to buy lab equipment. So, like, I'm willing to, like, suspend disbelief about, like, how he could pay doctors for her medical treatment.
Mm-hmm.
But it just doesn't seem to go anywhere. And I will say, like, the Sandman action in this is probably the best action in the movie. Like, I really love when he's, like, the giant Sandman, like, punches, like, all the cop cars.
Oh, yeah, that's a lot of fun.
The armored car fight, like, starts really good, and then, like, you're like, oh, wait, it's over.
My favorite action scene in the movie, and still the last maybe great action scene, we were talking about last time in Spider-Man 2, like, when's the last time a movie had action this good in the superhero genre? It's Spider-Man 3 gets close with the tunnel fight scene with Sandman and Spider-Man, I think is seriously outstanding.
What do you want from me? Remember Ben Parker? The old man you shot down in cold blood?
What does it matter to you anyway?
Everything!
way the camera swoops in and out around those tunnels, around the trains, Sandman like deteriorating and regrowing himself. It's just like it was. I always thought it was really amazing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of the last great action scene in the movie. The other ones are good. They're solid. I like the fight with Peter and Harry in Harry's apartment. It's a good physical.
Oh yeah, no, I like that. Like that literally goes through the mirror. Like
Yeah.
there's so much going on in that fight, like metaphorically, like. But yeah, I don't know. I'm disappointed because I wanted it to be like one of those like, oh, this is actually good. I will like revisiting this, and now I'll be like, I can probably wait another 10 years.
Oh.
You know.
Yeah. On things that I actually am more your wavelength on in terms of like not liking this movie too much. The Gwen Stacy character I don't think actually works at all. I like Bryce Dallas Howard a lot. She's a really good actress, and I'm glad she's found a lot of success.
She's game in this. She keeps ending up in movies that I absolutely hate, but
she's not the problem.
She's not the problem in those movies usually. Actually, I can't think if she's ever been like a problem, like as like a bad performance. But
no, I think she's one of the more reliable actresses working today.
She's maybe the best part of The Village, but that's not saying a lot.
Oh, we're not getting into that, you fucking coward.
White Flight, the movie.
And this is the weirdest thing.
Fucking Village.
This is the weirdest thing when I was.
And
God
just
damn it,
burn
man.
it. Just burn it down.
This was the weirdest thing.
I just rewatched
revisiting
Signs,
this movie.
and Signs
no,
really held up.
No,
Signs holds up tremendously.
Oh, Signs is great. There you go.
No, it's not great, but it holds up.
It is.
Goddamn.
One of the weirdest things revisiting this was like,
and people don't
the whole
fucking
thing,
get
the whole charade
I'm
about
saying
Venom
about
being
M. Night
forced.
Shyamalan.
I'm gonna kill you.
People are like, people don't get it. No one gets it out there. I'm God's angry man.
I'll shoot you.
One day a rain is gonna come and wash away this film Twitter.
Are you done?
I didn't like this movie, Diego.
I could tell.
Can I go home now?
No.
That guy on the pier in Jaws.
It's weird that Venom was forced into the movie, but I thought like thematically, his stuff kind of tracks for Peter Parker stuff, at least for the first hour and a half, maybe. And
well,
then,
definitely with the identity crisis thing, and then like he literally starts becoming dependent on the Spider-Man suit in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I got to point out one brilliant thing is that whenever they cut to a POV shot of Venom, of the symbiote like creeping up on people, they play the sound effect, and I couldn't like it sounded very familiar. I was trying to think. It's the sound effect when the pod people are growing in the Invasion of the Body Snatchers remake.
Oh, which one?
The 70s one.
Oh, I didn't catch that at all.
Yeah, it's very brief, like because it took me a minute, and then I finally realized what it was.
Oh, that's fucking great. That's a great movie.
So,
that is better than Spider-Man 3.
And it's very fitting for what they're doing with the Venom stuff. I like that in interviews they say like Sam Raimi was hesitant to put Venom in the film, but he eventually came around to the character. And by come around to the character, they mean he fundamentally changed the character to fit his sensibilities more.
And you know what? This is my favorite version of Venom ever.
Oh, yeah. You know what? You're not wrong. He
Yeah.
understands that there's a lot of potential with Venom that no one ever capitalized on.
Yeah. I was a little harsh on the Venom movie that came out last year at the time of this recording.
Because it's bad?
It's bad. It's for sure. I'm not going to say it's good. But the big thing is that, like, they don't do anything interesting with Venom as a character. They kind of turn him into, like, a Little Shop of Horrors comedy sidekick, which an idea that's not actually terrible. It's just the movie's not very good, you know?
Yeah.
But here, yeah, they're exploring things relating to the characters, themes, the tragedy. It's almost there. All the pieces are in this movie. That's what this podcast is coming down to. It's all there, just not quite.
Not quite.
Christopher Young would replace Danny Elfman for the music score on this too, because Danny Elfman and Sam Raimi did not get along on Spider-Man 2. They had a lot of conflicts, I guess.
Really?
Yeah.
He showed up for interviews for the behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe it was just with Sam Raimi that he didn't want to work with, or I couldn't tell you. I don't know
That's
enough
weird
about
because they
that.
have a long career together.
And he came back to score Oz the Great and Powerful, so they made amends. They made amends.
Did they really? Are you sure that's not like Hollywood bullshit?
Maybe it is, but I know that it was a mutual breakup for Spider-Man 3.
Because sometimes it could just be like, sometimes a person's like, I just don't want to do another fucking Spider-Man score. Because he's kind of taking a seat back. He doesn't do as many superhero scores anymore. Because he used to be the superhero guy. And now he's like, no, I did the Avengers theme. And they paid me a lot to do Justice League.
No, actually, Silvestri did the Avengers.
Yeah, but didn't Danny Elfman do the Avengers theme?
No, he did Age of Ultron.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry.
I thought they specifically brought him in for the Avengers theme. Like they just did the theme independently, and then Alvin Silvestri did like the score of the movie.
I don't think so.
Okay, I don't know.
If I'm wrong, I would be happy to be corrected. I just know that I'm not.
I just always see him credited as the Avengers theme.
That's so weird.
That could be like a Weird Al getting every parody song credit.
maybe.
So,
but I actually think the score is pretty good in this film too. Sometimes a little much, but for a movie like this, it's kind of exactly what it needs.
Yeah, it's not jarring, but it's kind of jarring when it needs to be. Like I like the opening credits, which kind of work as like last time thing.
Oh, we didn't even talk about that in Spider-Man 2.
Yeah, well, it's there too, but they do it better here, honestly.
Really? Oh, this is a take.
Well, because the last time it was really just like a recap. It just kind of told us what happened. This time, like, they literally start weaving in, like, the Sandman and Venom theme into the opening score.
I really love that a lot.
Which I thought was really interesting, because, like, it foreshadows what's to come, which they didn't do in the last movie.
Well, they used Doc Ock's theme a little bit.
A little bit, but not in the way that it's used here. Like literally at some point, the Venom theme almost completely takes over. And honestly, I was like, all right, I'm on board. And then it lost me like 10 minutes later.
No, okay. You know what's weird? I've been giving this movie a lot of credit. The opening monologue, hey, that's me. I was like, ooh.
Yeah. That's not a great, I will say one thing. Here's one thing in my notes I wrote. Sandman finally shows up. Holy hell, we are 45 minutes into this thing and nothing concrete has been established.
Yeah.
Cool scene, though.
It's really hard to latch on to one consistent story or idea because they keep changing.
Revenge is like a poison. It can take us over. And before you know it, it can turn you into something ugly.
The suit. Where'd this come from? The power. Feels good. You lose yourself to it.
I gotta talk about something. Is Bruce Campbell as the French Maitre d' the key to all this?
I'm gonna say yes, just because I want to know where you're gonna take us.
Because he's a man, very clearly not a French man, pretending to be French, and Peter doesn't understand what he is saying, but goes along with him anyway. Much like how Peter and MJ don't understand what's going on with each other and can't communicate. Just like he keeps miscommunicating with the French Maitre d'.
We're through the looking glass here, people.
So that's the best scene in the movie.
I like it.
Yeah.
I disagree with your hypothesis, but I like it.
It's probably you can tell how bored I was that I even bothered writing that down in my notes.
But we do have to talk about the most controversial scene in the movie, and that is Peter Parker strutting down the street, being influenced by the symbiote.
Yeah, I don't care.
Okay. Well, I'm going to say that it's actually brilliant.
It's pretty funny. I think what people don't notice about it is that literally everyone that walks by him like looks at him like he's a jackass.
Yeah, no. Like, the movie's not saying he's cool. It's Peter Parker. Do you think that idiot knows anything about, like, endearing people?
Well, one thing I want to say is a moment in this that is like it was actually like genuinely hard to watch when MJ is being forced to break up with Peter, and not necessarily because like I'm like I believe in this love so much that I'm sad it's ending. It's just like I'm like, oh God, Peter Parker cannot handle what's about to happen to him. He does not have the emotional strength to handle being broken up with by the girl of his dreams. You know?
Yeah.
Like, he can handle a lot. That's the one thing he's built not to withstand.
He's probably been shot, stabbed, tossed off buildings. He stopped basically like the fastest train in New York City with his body. And yeah, no, that's the one thing that will break him. But the whole idea about the dancing scene is, you know, that it is a joke. Like,
yeah. Well,
Peter Parker will not understand what it's like to be cool.
It's the thing people latch onto when they complain about this movie, and it's like, that is not even a problem. Like, this movie has problems, that's not one of them.
Yeah. I will say the jazz scene that goes on later in the film when he goes out with Gwen starts off very strong, and then it goes on too long. I no longer buy into it, and I'm not crazy about that.
I'm definitely not either. I mean, I still remember the silence in the theater when that happened.
You know, it was like, oh, this is a little heavy.
And that's like, again, that's a very, I think, big misstep of the movie, because it's like, again, you kind of need the symbiote to make Peter turn into a real asshole. Like, he can't do it naturally, because that's just not who he is. So it kind of, it shows that he could be that person, but deep down he really isn't. Because we could all be like the worst versions of ourselves. But we have things that usually stop us from doing that. Things like ethics and morals and all that bullshit. When he slaps MJ, it's like, and then it's suddenly about like how he feels about it.
Yeah, that's not great.
But it's also like, he's like, oh, I flew off the handle, which is what like abusers say. Like I don't know. I just, that it crosses a line kinda. That I feel like maybe you could make that work, but I'm not sure. I don't know.
It's the big red flag moment of, oh yeah, these are dudes writing this.
Yeah. The only other bigger red flag is when someone stabs their significant other in the heart because they think they're going to be an evil person.
Oh, so you saw the Game of Thrones finale?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Peter schmoozes with Betty Brant in this. I want to bring that up.
Oh, yeah.
That was not pleasant.
No, it wasn't. Like, they go too far in weird ways. Not because of the awkward dancing, which works as effectively as it needs to.
That's really all they needed.
Yeah.
And then I do like the idea of him bringing Gwen to the jazz club where MJ now works.
Yeah, like, that's about as much of an asshole as you needed to show him being, you know. Like, maybe switch over to MJ's perspective for a while and see, like, you know, because that's emotional abuse at that point.
Yeah.
Towards MJ. So we need to see how she feels about it, and we just never get that. We don't need to see her get hit by Peter.
We see her get kidnapped.
Boy, do we.
And then we get a 30-minute fucking fight, and then the movie's over.
It's too long. I do like that they decided that Harry would not go out as a villain, though.
I do like that, too. I did like him coming back at the end. Although I do not like the look of his Green Goblin.
Yeah, it doesn't really work.
I like the glider, but I don't like his, like, they just...
He just looks like a snowboarder.
Yeah, again, more like characters keep just disappearing from this movie. And oh my god, the Sandman and Venom meeting for the first time might be the worst film scene ever.
No, it's not. It's not great, but it's not the worst scene ever.
It's really bad.
It's a low point of the movie.
It feels like it was like someone else directed that scene. You know? Like, it feels like an Amazing Spider-Man scene.
Oh, no. We cannot go there. That's just
as
not
bad.
the case.
It's as bad as some of the best scenes in that movie. I'll say that.
What I do want to say is that ultimately the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy is about the choices people make their actions to do so and the consequences of those choices and actions. And sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. And I really like the end quote.
Whatever comes our way, whatever battle we have raging inside us, we always have a choice. My friend Harry taught me that. He chose to be the best of himself. It's the choices that make us who we are, and we can always choose to do what's right.
Very on the nose. It is not as well written as some of the other stuff that we praised in Spider-Man 2. But I think
Sandman just say that sometimes we don't have a choice?
The overall trilogy being about choice and these poor people who just can't catch a break in their lives, it makes this whole series,
I'll give you a break.
Like, really, just fill me with the love of movies. Like I'm really glad that this trilogy exists. It's too bad it didn't end maybe as well as it could have, but I'm happy to have them, even with all their flaws and all the issues this last one in particular has. I am glad I revisited this, and I'm glad I started the Spider-Man retrospective with you.
I have to find it in my heart to forgive the filmmakers of this movie.
There you go. That's your arc.
Not saying it's going to happen. You know what, though? It's easy to forgive these people when you know what's coming next. If you want to, these movies make you love cinema. Next, make you despise society.
Spider-Man 3. One of us is a fan, one of us is not. I'm very curious about how it stands now. I might put out like a Twitter poll or something like that.
No, everyone's going to say they love it. Don't even bother.
That would actually be kind of cool. I would be very happy about that.
I know how people react. I know what the fuck is up. Fucking people.
Can you tell people what the fuck is up with where they can find you?
No. Stay away from me.
Okay, Peter Parker.
I'm closing myself off. This is a good note to end on before I leave for important business matters. And maybe we'll never return.
No, you have to say the quote from the end of the first Spider-Man now.
The human spider, that sucks.
This could be the end of Spider-Man.
Matt, where can the people find you for real now?
I'm at EmperorOTN at Twitter.com and YouTube and Patreon. Give money to the people who just watched Spider-Man 3 Fund.
You can find me at Twitter.com/TheDiegoCrespo. Check out The Waffle Press on YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, iTunes. Like, subscribe if you didn't like this episode. Like, subscribe anyways, because you might find something you do like. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We have been professionally unprofessional.
I'm through with love. I'll never fall again. Said adieu to love. Don't ever call again. For I must have you or no one. And so I'm through with love. I've locked my heart. I'll keep my feelings there. I have stocked my heart with icy frigid air. And I'm